To Code That Crunch next lesson. Today we will be talking about arrays. So what is an array? An array is basically a list of things. It can be of any one of the data types. It's basically a list of things, the same data type stored together in one variable. So let's start with an integer array. So int, so that's the data type you start with first, and then the array name, let's call it numbers, and then you have these square brackets like this. So you can declare it like this and initialize it only with a size. So that's the amount of elements that the array can take, and it cannot be changed further in the program. But for this for this instance, I'm going to take that out, and I'm just going to directly assign variables, and then I don't have to put in values, sorry, and then I don't have to put in a size because it will automatically detect the amount of elements in the array. So there we have 5 elements in our array. But what happens if we want to use these values in the array? How do we access them? So there's a thing called an index, which is basically like the address of the array, where in the array to find the specific number you want to work with. So you're going to say, so I'm just going to say index here and just put the indexes above here. So indexes always start with a 0. Okay, so the first element in the array would be 0. The second element would be index 1. The third element would be index 3. The fourth element would be the third element would be index 2. The fourth element would be index 3, and the fifth element will be index 4. Okay, but that tells me, okay, so the 2 is stored at index 0, but how do I get it? How do I work with it? So with arrays, we're always going to use square brackets. Okay, so if I want to access the 2 or element 1, I would say cout. Okay, element, just say element 1, and then how do I access that? So we're going to say numbers, which is the name of the array, square brackets, and in square brackets 0, because the first element's index is 0. Okay, and then if we run that, we will see element 1 equals 2. So the first element is equals to 2, right? So we saw that that actually worked. And then if we want to access the fourth element, we will say element. Why is that so difficult to spell? Numbers, square brackets. So the fourth element will be index 3. So it will always be the n minus 1, basically. The nth element, to get the nth element, it will be index equals to n minus 1. Right. So I'm just going to put in a new line here, and then usually when we work with arrays, we use loops. So let's say we want to calculate the sum of this array. So let's use a for loop, because I like for loops. That's my favorite kind of loop. So int k is the counter equals to 0, k smaller than how many elements we have in the array. We have 5 elements in the array. So we want the loop to execute 5 times. We're going to start the counter at 0 because we want to start at index 0. So we're going to say we want it to execute 5 times. So while it's 0, it will execute. While it's 1, it will execute. While it's 2, 3, 4, etc. So we want to make it smaller than 5, and then we just increment it there in the body of the loop. And then we can say, let's just declare a variable for the sum. We can say int sum equals 0. We want to give it an initial value, so we can add it up. So let's say sum equals, so you can either say sum equals sum plus numbers with what index we want to use it. So it's going to be a loop. It's going to repeat. So we're going to use k, the counter, as our index there. So then every time it will say sum equals sum plus numbers k. So that's one way to do it. I prefer to do it another way because it's much shorter. So it's just going to be sum plus equals. Okay, so that's a bit of a shortcut. Numbers with index k, right? And then that would, every time it will say plus equals, so it will go, the sum is first, it will be 0, then it will be 2. And then 2 plus 4 is 6. 6 plus 6 is 12, and it will go on like that. And then we can also, just to make sure that it worked, we can print that to the console. And we just use the variable sum there again. And then we quickly run that. Oh, and it gives us an error because we forgot to put a semicolon there. And we run again, and it says sum 30. So if you go put those into the calculator, you will see that it will also give you 30. Right. So that's basically arrays. So let's just, to illustrate that you can have more than one array with, you can use it with different data types. So let's just initialize another array. These curly braces here are very important when we work with arrays, when you initialize them with values. So let's just say Johnny, Danny, Susan, Susie, and 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's make it the same amount as our previous array. So let's say Tom. So we've got an array of size 5 there, and it's a string array of names, so we have to use quotation marks. So let's say it's people in a soccer team or a football team, and we want to assign them numbers for their t-shirts or something like that. So let's see. So just say cout, and then we're still going to make use of the first number. So we can say numbers, first array numbers k, and then let's put two minuses in between to just show, okay, number that would be, let's say, for instance, Johnny. So then we say name and k again. And we just say in line there because we're going to print it multiple times. So now we have a cout inside the loop there. And if we run that, it will say 2 is Johnny, 4 is Danny, 6 is Susan, 8 is Susie, 10 is Tom. And then it will still print the sum there. So I hope that gives you a better understanding of the concept of arrays. So array is basically a list of data that are all the same data type, but they are stored under one variable. So yeah, that would be all from me today. Please subscribe to Crunch That Code for more great videos, and have a great day.